Over here on the Cattleya side, we have our green hornet that's still in bloom after all these months. We have our Brassavola crossed with Marii that seems to have finally wanted to bloom. Again, I think the reason is the increased artificial light that we just added. Our BC Moikai that is still doing the stubborn thing and not wanting to bloom. And a few no ID hybrids that hopefully will be blooming soon. Because if we were able to make these ones bloom with artificial light, they don't have any excuse not to. This Walkeriana hybrid here, it was so frustrating because it actually had buds for us, and when we were moving into this room, she was dropped, and after years of waiting for her to bloom, they broke, and now we're probably gonna have to wait another year. Our Epidendrum nocturnum, that was already really needing a repot. As you can see, I placed some microfiber to try and keep all the roots it grew out of the pot hydrated. We left it as it was because we were growing the seed pot for mat, and now I think I'm gonna wait for it to make a new growth to give it a repot, because I think it's safer. Because if my experience with Cattleyas and Cattleya related plants tells me anything, is that when I repot it, most of those roots are gonna go. So I might as well wait for it to have a new growth. Over here we enter the Oncidium section, and as you can see, it is a bit of a visual mess. As much as I like Oncidiums, they do not make for the tidiest shelves. Finally blooming for the first time, we have our psychopsis. And you can definitely tell we're entering Oncidium season because we have our miltonia hybrid blooming, our zygopetalum, our swatwanum is going to bloom too. And a big part of the visual mess is this huge thing, because our Sherry Baby decided to make 2 gigantic flower spikes, and then I thought, you know what? 2 isn't enough for me to stake my claim into this area. I'm gonna make a 3rd one. So I think at some point in a couple of months, this is gonna be really chaotic with beautiful chocolate smelling flowers. Oh, and this Oncidium hybrid is making the 3rd flower spike of the year. Again, making sure I don't get to repot that horrendous mess that needs a repot for like 2 years. We also have a few other Oncidium types that don't seem to want to bloom for us. But we're going to be patient and give them time, because if all these other ones are making flower spikes, it's because the conditions are not bad. This board here where we keep our mounts also looks pretty chaotic, because this big Dendrobium here is at that phase where it's making a lot of new growths, but they're all poking out, so they cover the whole board and everything looks like a mess. But my experience with this plant tells me that soon these are gonna start weighing themselves down and the plant's gonna get much more tidy. So as you can tell, not only giving it a cooler winter resulted in a lot of flowers, I don't think this plant has ever looked so healthy. So yeah. If you are questioning whether you should put your winter rest requiring Dendrobiums outside for the winter, this is a huge proponent for the yes. Over here we have our Paraphalaenopsis, which struggled a bit for a couple of years. But since we moved it here, I think it's doing a lot better, and it grew this whole new growth since it's been here. And I think the reason for that is 2 things. First of all, it gets much better lighting here. Second of all, we recently changed the medium we put in this mount to have a lot more sphagnum, and I think it's giving it a lot more hydration. Next to it, and almost overshadowed by the other Dendrobium, is our Dendrobium senile, which looks really cute, but I still find this plant frustrating because we bought it from a seller at an orchid show that guaranteed us that this was a good specimen-sized plant and it was flowering size. But as soon as we tried to unmount it from the mount it came with, we realized it's a bunch of little pseudobulbs all bunched up together to pretend that it's a big plant. And upon further research online, we realized that those bulbs weren't even flowering size. So what you have here is what's left of that plant because a lot of those bulbs didn't make it. So we still have a little bit to wait till this one blooms. And hopefully when it's a big flowering size plant, I can forget how bitter I am about it. Here we have the Brassavola cucullata we got a few years ago. That seems to be doing okay, but still no flowers. And she's almost directly under the grow lights. And as you can see, it's getting a little bit of a purple tinge. So I don't think lack of light is the issue. Next to it, we have our Leptotus bicolor that flowers for us religiously every year. And above it, we have our Leptotus unicolor, which even though we purchased it as flowering size 2 years ago, no flowers. It is making bigger and bigger growth, so I'm starting to think that it being flowering size was, again, a bit of wishful thinking from the seller's part. Over here we have our Dendrobium and small Cattleya shelf. We have our Dendrobium kingianum that just bloomed this year well for the first time after being given a winter rest, and I recently repotted. We have our Dendrobium abhans that is doing very well, and our Dendrobium parisi that seems to only make cakey growths that climb further and further out of the pot and not grow very well beyond that. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong with this one. I'm going to try and repot it soon and see if I can stimulate it to grow some other way. We also have our Epidendrum porpax that's growing really well. And over on this side, we have all the Cattleya seedlings and the smaller Cattleya types and Rupiculus laelius. Starting over here, we have this encyclia that we got recently in the Porto show that it's growing very, very well. Considering it's a Brazilian import that came just with a bit of sphagnum, it's growing really well. Actually, all the orchids we got from this seller are doing great. We also have the Laelia vasconcelosiana that Matt sent us recently that looked a bit worse for wear for a while there, but it is producing new roots and a new growth, so I'm hopeful for this one. We also have this Laelia lundi that grows well but refuses to bloom. A smaller Cattleya back there that also refuses to bloom. Our encyclia Marii. And for a little bit I thought she wasn't going to bloom this year, but it decided to give us these 3 flowers out of an old pseudobulb, so I guess I can't complain too much. Over here we have a few more Rupiculus laelius that are also growing well, but not giving us flowers. And the one that makes me think that the problem with the Rupiculus laelius can't be lack of light is this one that is blooming for us for the 3rd time. It's the 3rd year that it tries to bloom for us. The first 2 years it aborted the flower, but considering this looks about to pop, I think this might be the year we finally get to see her bloom. Over here we have a few Cattleya seedlings. The Cattleya schilleriana back there we got ourselves a couple of years ago, and it is developing well, especially for how small it came. I'm really happy with how it's developing. And these ones over here are the ones that Matt sent us that are also pulling through fantastically. Over on this last shelf, we have some smaller Oncidiums, some Bulbophyllum, Coelogyne, and some miscellaneous smaller orchids. This is the Coelogyne cristata that we were gifted this Christmas by a family friend. It is producing new growth, so far so good. We did put it outside for the winter. I'm not sure if it did anything for the plant, but it didn't hurt it either, so I'm pretty sure we're going to do it the same this year. This is our Coelogyne fimbriata, which flowers for us and seems to do pretty well. We keep it with a reservoir so it stays pretty moist most of the time. And sometimes it has a little bit of dieback in the leaf tips. But other than that, it grows, it makes new growths, it flowers. I completely hate the smell of the flowers. But other than that, I'm really happy with this little plant. And I find the pseudobulbs really cute. Over here we have a little collection of Oncidium twinkles and Oncidium titanium and miniature Oncidiums like that are all doing really well. This is the beautiful Oncidium nanum that we got at the show recently. And as I was saying, all the orchids we got from this seller are doing great, so look at that root development. From a plant that came from Brazil in a bag, it's doing fantastically well. And the same goes for the Oncidium cruensis we got at the same show. Over here on what I like to call our miniature shelf, we have our two Tolumnias, which are doing really well, but not giving us flower spikes. We also have our Capanemia superflua that is growing new growths, but also no flowers. To contradict that trend, here we have our Harella that flowered late last year and now has produced a whopping 4 flower spikes in the last 2 months. So hopefully if they all bloom, it's going to be quite a show. Back here we have our one and only Gastrochilus that for a while I was really happy because I thought it was going to bloom. But apparently something seems to be happening with this plant because it decided instead of blooms it's going to make a huge amount of keikis. So I guess something at some point stressed this plant, and I don't know what, but I'm not really happy with what I've been able to do with this plant so far. If you have any idea on why it would be doing this and what I could be doing wrong in its care, please let me know. Over here we have what's left of our Masdevallia minuta, which even though it's said that it's supposed to be a warm grower, as soon as we hit summer, we lost quite a bit of it. I have since put it in clay in hopes that it will kind of cool down the immediate environment of the plant. But I'm not sure if it was warmth or excess water this summer that kind of did this plant in. I'm hoping these few little growths that she has left are able to pull through. But at this point, I think it's a 50-50 chance between pulling through or all of these slowly turning yellow like the others did. And finally, in the miniature shelf, we have the Ceratostylis ruba that we got last year, supposedly blooming size, but I'm pretty sure it's not. Something seems to have happened here in the center of the fan because it got really dry, but then it started producing a new leaf, so I'm not sure if that's normal or not. Finally, back there, we have our only 2 Bulbophyllums that I put in somewhat of a self-watering setup, I think a year ago maybe, or 2 years. And it has a new growth. It keeps developing growths, they both do. But then old pseudobulbs rot out or dry out, and they don't flower, they don't look the healthiest. I'm afraid bulbophyllums are still something I'm trying to figure out. And on one hand, it's good that I haven't, because if I figure out how to grow these, I'm seriously going to suffer from lack of space, because I love bulbophyllums so much. Down here on the floor we have all the orchids we got discounted from a garden center a few weeks ago. They're still here being semi-quarantined, because as nice as discounted garden center plants are to have, I still don't trust them when it comes to pests. So they're going to stay here for a little while longer. But so far they seem to be doing good, even the gold growers. So I guess that's it for this collection update. I hope the video doesn't turn out too long, and I hope it wasn't too boring to watch. We're doing this a little bit for our own benefit, because we do take a lot of pictures and video of the flowers, but we don't really record that much footage of how the plants are doing. So this isn't like a nice record to have on how our plants are doing, so we can then compare at a later date. Still, I hope it was an entertaining video, and if you liked it, please don't forget to subscribe, put a like on this video, leave a comment, and don't forget to come back next week for another video. Goodbye.